So let's talk about working with Copic markers. You're going to need a number of supplies in addition to your Copic markers. These are the 6 colors in your starter kit and the Memento black pad, and you're going to need some scratch paper. Make sure you're always working on scratch paper because it prevents damaging the work surface underneath as you're working and from pulling color up from underneath and ruining your project. So when you're coloring, and you're going to do, the first thing we're going to show you here is a flat fill. So you're going to use a tight circular motion. So you'll notice that that bullet nib is just going around and around and around in tight circles. And what you want to do is a wet on wet application of color. If you let that area dry too much as you begin adding the next stroke, you're going to find that you have stroke lines. So this is how we avoid getting stroke lines and just keep a nice flat layer of color. And usually this is what we'll start with, is just this flat layer of color. I'm about at the end there, and I'm using red, so I'm kind of being very careful not to get too close to the lines. Red is kind of a finicky color in that you want to make sure that you don't oversaturate the paper as you're working. So there it is, flat color. Now we want to do some shading. So we can do this even though we only have one shade of red, by letting it dry just a little bit and then coming back and adding some additional stroke lines on the side where we want to have some shade. We're going to create some depth. And so this kicks it up from a flat coloring to more of, it's just going to give it some more depth. And so then when you look down a little bit closer on this, and I'm going to zoom the camera in so you can see this a little bit better, you'll see I've got that shading in there. And for some people, they may like that. I actually like it. It doesn't bother me. I like the effect. But some people like to have a smoother shade or transition of color between the darker area and the lighter area. So what you can do in this case is take that same color marker and start going over that area, blending the two where the two meet, the darker and the lighter shades, and start pulling in a more gradual effect between the two colors. And then I'm going to go back over the top of the whole thing again so that the end result is a very gradual and very subtle blending of the colors from the darker shade into the lighter shade. And so I'm going to zoom the camera again one more time so you can see that up close. And as you can, like I said, it's very subtle, but you can do it. And you'll see there, that's why we need scratch paper underneath. And now I'm taking the BG10 and I'm going to use that. It's called Cool Shadow, and I love this for highlighting white images and for adding shading and shadow to things that are, like clouds are white. And so this kind of gives the illusion of shade and more depth and perception to the clouds. So I like the added dimension that it gives. And then additionally, you can also add shadow to the images that you have, like for example this kite is suspended in the sky, and then to make it look just a little bit more pop off the page, I'm going to outline it with Cool Shadow and continue in some areas. I'm going to give it even a darker intensity that may imply shading or darker areas, and then here you can see a close-up of how that looks, and it just makes your images pop off the page, and very easy to do with that BG10. And now I'm going to show you how to take two different colors and do tip-to-tip shading. So I have that begonia pink laid down in a flat color on the bubblegum machine, and now I want to add some darker shading, and I want it to be more dramatic than just using the begonia pink. So I took lipstick red and I touched the bullet nib of the begonia to the chisel nib on the lipstick red. And you'll notice that I tilt that lipstick red upwards so that the color, and I'm working with gravity, and it's letting the gravity pull the ink down towards that chisel nib and allowing the bullet nib to just wick that color away and absorb into the tip a little bit. And so then I'm going to start applying it over where I've colored exactly where I want, shading, and as I start to blend the two, it creates a richer, more intense shading effect. This is one of my favorite ways to add shading, because then it's a very gradual look, but also in essence much more dramatic than if I had just used the begonia and done it that way. So it just all depends on the effect that you're going for. But here I have two very dramatically different shades of color, and yet I'm able to bring them together by using this tip-to-tip method. Look at that, isn't that stunning? Now all I have to do is take the begonia pink and rub it against some clean white scratch paper until the red's gone and the marker is ready to go. It doesn't hurt that marker tip one bit. And I think it's an excellent way to show your customers how easily they can use their Copic markers to get those artistic shading effects. Thanks for watching.